Okay, imagine this. It's the dead of night, totally dark out on the Arabian Sea. You could almost feel that salty spray, the rocking of the boat.
Yeah, unsettling quiet.
Exactly. And then, picture this happening. A secret transfer, something big. We're talking drugs. A massive haul worth something like, what, 1,800 crore rupees?
An absolutely staggering figure, 1,800 crore.
And these smugglers, they're right on the edge,
Yeah.
between pulling it off and,
Yeah.
well, everything going disastrously wrong.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? The kind of high risk, high reward world they operate in, moving that kind of value across open water at night.
It's incredible. So that's what we're diving into today. We're going beyond just the headlines about what happened off the Gujarat coast that night, April 12th into the 13th, 2025.
Right. This involves some serious players, the Gujarat Anti-Terrorist Squad, the ATS, and the Indian Coast Guard.
Yeah, this wasn't just a chance encounter. It was targeted.
And that's a crucial point. It tells you something about the intelligence networks operating behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So our mission here, for everyone listening, is to really unpack this operation. We want to get a feel for the sheer scale of the drug trade this highlights, and maybe more importantly, what it means for, national security.
It's much more than just one failed smuggling attempt. It's a window into a much bigger picture.
Exactly. So let's go back to that night near the Indian Maritime Boundary Line, IMBL. What actually unfolded out there in the darkness?
Well, as you said, it wasn't random. The key here is intelligence. The authorities, the ATS and Coast Guard, they had information suggesting something was going down right there, right then.
So they were lying in wait, essentially.
It seems that way. They moved based on a specific tip-off. It wasn't just a routine patrol stumbling onto something. This was pre-planned based on intel.
Okay, so imagine the smuggler's perspective. They're out there, maybe feeling like they're in the clear. Then suddenly, bam, Coast Guard vessel appears.
Yeah, the reaction was pretty immediate and quite desperate, apparently.
What did they do?
They started dumping the cargo, throwing it overboard. We're talking about 300 kilograms of what's suspected to be methamphetamine.
300 kilos.
Yeah.
Just tossed into the sea.
Exactly. A clear sign of panic, trying to ditch the evidence before they could be boarded or apprehended. The priority instantly became escape, not protecting the goods.
Wow. Just jettisoning 1,800 crore rupees worth of product. That's quite the reaction.
It speaks volumes about the pressure they were under, right? The fear of capture must have massively outweighed the value of the drugs at that moment.
A real nautical showdown, you could say. Okay,
Yeah.
let's try and visualize this. 300 kilograms of meth, and that value, 1,800 crore rupees. That's hard to even grasp that kind of money.
It really is. Some reports put it in perspective, like you could buy a super yacht, maybe a private island, and still have cash left over.
It's almost an abstract number. It's so huge.
But the substance itself, methamphetamine, is anything but abstract. It's a synthetic stimulant, highly addictive, and it just devastates lives and communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So seizing this isn't just about the money. It's potentially preventing immense harm down the line.
That's the crucial takeaway. The human cost averted is immeasurable.
Now, this happened near the Indian Maritime Boundary Line, the IMBL. Can you explain why that line is significant? Why operate near there?
Sure. So the IMBL is basically the line separating India's territorial waters from international waters.
Okay.
Smugglers often try to exploit this zone. Maybe there's a mistaken belief or a hope that once they cross into international waters, they're somehow safer or outside the immediate jurisdiction of, say, the Indian Coast Guard.
Like an invisible get-out-of-jail-free line in the ocean?
Something like that, perhaps. But this incident clearly shows that's not the case. The authorities can and do operate effectively near and even beyond that line, especially when acting on intelligence.
So that perceived safety net is, well, not much of a net at all.
It's pretty flimsy, yeah.
But it still begs the question, why Gujarat? Why does this specific coastline seem to be such a magnet for this kind of activity? It keeps happening.
There are a few key reasons, really. First, the coastline itself is vast, over 1,600 kilometers long. That inherently makes it difficult to patrol every inch. It's porous.
Right, a huge area to cover.
And second, and this is probably the biggest factor, is geography. Its proximity to what's known as the Golden Crescent.
That's Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan.
Exactly. A major global hub for opium production, and increasingly other synthetics too. Gujarat is relatively close, making the Arabian Sea a logical transit route for drugs heading towards India or other destinations.
So the sea route offers a way to bypass land borders.
Precisely. It offers a degree of anonymity, maybe. Small boats can try to blend in with fishing traffic, commercial shipping. It's harder to spot than, say, a truck crossing a land border checkpoint, though clearly not impossible.
A challenging environment for law enforcement, definitely, like finding a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is the entire Arabian Sea.
That's a good way to put it.
And as we mentioned, this isn't the first time we've seen a major bust like this off Gujarat. There's a history here, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's become a recurring theme, sadly. If you look back just recently, February 2024, there was that massive seizure.
Was that the one involving the Navy as well?
Yes, the Indian Navy, the NCB Narcotics Control Bureau, and the ATS again. They intercepted a vessel carrying, get this, around 3,300 kilograms of narcotics.
3,300 kilos. That's enormous.
It was reportedly the largest offshore drug bust in India's history at the time, a mix of Karas, methamphetamine, morphine. Estimated value was somewhere between 1,300 and 2,000 crore rupees.
Wow. And they caught people that time, right?
They did. 5 Pakistani nationals were apprehended. It really highlighted the international angle, the source of these drugs. The Union Home Minister even commended the agencies involved.
A huge success. But there have been others too.
Definitely. Go back to November 2023, about 700 kilos of meth seized from an Iranian vessel. Then, just in April 2024, 173 kilos of hashish recovered near Porbandar, linked back to a Pakistan-based group.
So it's a persistent threat. This route is clearly favored by traffickers.
It seems so. And these agencies, the ATS and Coast Guard, they've been busy. Reports mention around 13 successful joint operations just in recent years.
13. That's significant. It shows they're actively countering this and getting results.
It suggests, improved intelligence sharing, better coordination, learning from each incident. They're making it riskier for the smugglers.
Which brings us back to that basic question. Why keep trying? If the risks are so high, if agencies are getting better at catching them, why persist?
Well, sadly, the answer is probably quite simple. Money. The potential profits in the international drug trade are just astronomical.
So the reward outweighs the risk in their calculation.
But the organizations behind this, yes. They likely see seizures and arrests as, unfortunately, a cost of doing business. The sheer amount of money to be made if even one shipment gets through is a powerful motivator.
A grim reality. And maybe Gujarat's closeness to ports like Karachi also plays a role. Just speculating.
That's certainly plausible. Proximity to departure points is always a factor in smuggling routes. But again, contrast that with the fact that this latest operation wasn't just luck. It was intelligence-driven.
Right, that tip-off was critical. It shows the agencies aren't just patrolling randomly. They have sources, they have information.
Exactly. It highlights the proactive side of their work, gathering intelligence, analyzing it, and then acting decisively. That's often the key to these successful interceptions.
It suggests someone, somewhere, knew about this specific shipment and talked.
Potentially, yes. Or it could be other forms of intelligence gathering, but the point is, it wasn't blind luck.
Let's zoom out a bit then, because this isn't just about stopping drugs from hitting the streets, is it? There's a bigger national security dimension here.
Absolutely. This is a critical point. The vast sums of money generated by the drug trade don't just disappear. They often fuel other illicit activities.
Like what? Terrorism, organized crime.
Exactly. There's often a nexus, especially when you consider the source region, the Golden Crescent. It's an area with considerable instability. Drug money can easily be laundered and diverted to fund extremist groups or large criminal networks.
So intercepting these drugs isn't just about public health. It's actively disrupting funding for potentially violent or destabilizing forces.
Precisely. It's a direct hit against their financial resources. Remember that Gujarat ATS report from 2022? They mentioned seizing drugs worth over, I think, 2,170 crore rupees over 3 years.
Wow.
And they specifically noted the involvement of Pakistani and Iranian nationals, underscoring that transnational link and the security implications.
It really paints a picture of how interconnected these threats are. Drugs, crime, terrorism, all potentially linked by flows of illicit money.
It's a complex web, and tackling the drug trade is one way to try and unravel parts of it.
Which makes the work of the Gujarat ATS and the Indian Coast Guard even more vital. We should probably take a moment to appreciate what they do. These are the folks on the front lines.
Absolutely. They are, in many ways, the unsung guardians. Their work is inherently dangerous. Think about it, nighttime patrols, potentially confronting armed criminals on the open sea.
In difficult conditions, trying to secure evidence, make arrests, it takes real bravery.
And skill. Maritime interdiction is complex. Plus, the ATS itself, originally more focused on counterterrorism, has clearly adapted to become a major force against narcotics trafficking, too.
Showing how those threats overlap, right?
Exactly. And the Coast Guard provides that constant maritime shield, that presence out there. Their joint operations, as we noted, seem to be particularly effective.
But that collaboration seems key, sharing intelligence, coordinating assets.
It multiplies their effectiveness. They bring different strengths to the table. The ATS with its investigative and intelligence capabilities, the Coast Guard with its maritime assets and expertise. Together, they're a formidable opponent for these smuggling networks.
Okay, so back to this specific incident. The drugs were dumped overboard. The smugglers got away, at least initially. What happens next for the authorities? What do they do with the recovered packages?
Well, the first step is recovery, obviously, getting those 300 kilos out of the water.
Yeah.
Then it's all about forensics.
Analyzing the drugs.
Yes. They'll be taken to a lab, likely in Porbandar, for detailed analysis. Confirm it's methamphetamine, check the purity, look for any chemical markers or signatures that might indicate where it was produced.
So you can potentially trace the origin.
Sometimes, yes. Forensic chemistry can reveal clues about the manufacturing process or specific batches. They'll also examine the packaging, any labels, markings, the way it was wrapped, anything that could provide a lead.
Trying to connect the dots back up the chain.
Exactly. The goal isn't just to seize the drugs, but to use the seizure as evidence to identify and dismantle the larger network, involve the suppliers, the financiers, the organizers.
So this one bust could lead to further investigations, maybe more arrests down the line?
That's the hope. Every seizure provides potential intelligence for future operations. And of course, this all fits into the broader government strategy, the Drug-Free Harat initiative.
Right. These busts are one part of it, but not the whole story.
Correct. Interdiction, stopping the supply, is crucial. But the overall strategy also includes demand reduction prevention programs, education, awareness, and harm reduction, like rehabilitation and support for those struggling with addiction.
Tackling it from all angles, essentially.
Mhm.
Supply, demand, and helping people recover.
It has to be multifaceted to be effective in the long run.
Okay, so for someone listening to this, maybe hundreds or thousands of kilometers away from the Gujarat coast, they might think, okay, interesting story, but how does it really affect me?
That's a fair question, and the answer is drug trafficking, even if it seems distant, has ripple effects. The enormous profits generated don't just stay in one place. That money fuels crime more broadly. It can contribute to increased violence, corruption, petty crime, organized crime activities that can impact communities everywhere, not just coastal areas. It undermines the rule of law. It impacts public health systems.
So it's not just a coastal problem or a border problem. The consequences spread.
They really can. Think of it as a corrosive influence. So every successful bust like this, every disruption to these networks, is actually a positive step towards a safer environment for everyone in the country.
It's a win for community safety wherever you live. And, there's also just a bit of satisfaction in knowing these smugglers' plans were foiled.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the dedication and effectiveness of the agencies involved. They put themselves at risk to achieve these results.
So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things we should really take away from this incident?
I think three main things stand out for me. First, the sheer scale is undeniable. 1,800 crore rupees worth of meth. It just highlights the massive challenge India faces from maritime drug trafficking.
Okay, this scale. What else?
Second, the success of the joint operation. It really underscores how crucial and effective that collaboration between the ATS and the Coast Guard has become. They're working well together.
Right, the teamwork aspect.
And third, the persistence. The fact that these routes continue to be used, despite the risks in previous busts, points to the immense financial drivers behind the trade and the ongoing threat it poses, not just to health, but to national security.
Scale, collaboration, and the persistent threat fueled by profit. Got it.
Yeah, those are the key elements, I think.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? About the hidden world behind these headlines, the vast networks spanning continents, the sheer resources involved in moving these illicit goods.
It's a global enterprise, unfortunately.
And it raises questions like, what else needs to be done? Beyond catching the smugglers, how do you tackle the roots of this, the demand, the organizations behind it all? It's a complex fight, clearly far from over. Something to keep thinking about long after this conversation ends.